Hey, what is going on, guys? This is Evan from Coaster Revolution, bringing another amusement park rating and ranking video and full analysis of Six Flags Great America today. So this was an awesome Six Flags park that I visited over this summer for the first time, so let's get to ranking. As always, we'll be looking at the 10 categories here. The higher the weight signifies greater importance. So coasters are twice as important as cleanliness or landscaping, to me, for example. So as we always do, we're going to start by looking at the number of quality coasters here at the park, and this will be based on my tier list video that I already completed, so make sure you check out that video if you haven't already. So, at Six Flags Great America, there are 2 elite coasters, there are 5 great ones, very deep lineup, there are 4 good ones, 3 okay ones, and 1 bad one. So overall, they have a lot of great coasters here. Man, this is such a loaded lineup. It's probably one of the deepest lineups of any park in the world. They are missing an ultra elite coaster, but other than that, they have such a great lineup and it goes so deep. So I'm going to rate them a 9.5 out of 10, just because it's probably one of the deepest lineups out of any park in the world. Like I said before, you know, they've got a wing coaster, they've got a 4D free spin, they've got a Wild Mouse, they've got a B&M Flyer, they've got an extreme launch coaster in Max Force. It has the most intense acceleration or most intense launch out of any coaster in North America. They have an RMC and Goliath, a Topper Track Woody. It is very short, but it's intense and it's really fun. Has one of the longest 0G stalls on a coaster in the world. They have Raging Bull, which is a B&M Hyper, which has a lot of great airtime and a great layout for a Hyper. There's just a lot going for this park. They have so many good roller coasters, and probably the best part about this park, hands down. So 9.5 out of 10, almost perfect. They just need an ultra uber elite tier roller coaster, and I think that would bring them over the top to make them a 10 out of 10 in the coaster category. Okay, moving on to ride operations. The ride operations on the day that we were there, they were very average at best. I'm going to give them a 5 out of 10 on that. There were quite a lot of people there. It was relatively crowded, although I hear that this park gets way more crowded than it was when I was there. And it makes sense because it's placed between Chicago and Milwaukee, because it is located in Gurnee, Illinois, which is about an hour north of Chicago. On some rides, they were trying really hard to get people through as quick as possible, but they couldn't just because of the bin locations. Everyone had to flock to one single bin area, so that you had riders getting off rides, or getting off of the train, trying to get their stuff out of the bins, and then riders getting on, trying to put their stuff in bins, and it just slowed everything way down. So I totally understand why other parks just don't have any bins or anything on the platform at all to speed up operations, because a lot of the operations were really slow. Some of the rides were only running 1 train. X-Flight, while we were there, was running 1 train, so that line was extremely long. Max Force, 1 train, although that's such a short ride, it didn't impact the capacity too bad. But still not ideal. On some rides, there was just no sense of urgency whatsoever. Some rides, they did really well. Other rides were pretty poor. So I'm going to give them a pretty average 5 out of 10 in the ride operations category. Overall experience, I'm going to come back to, so I don't spoil anything. The atmosphere, unfortunately, the atmosphere was not great at this park. It really wasn't great. Based on the people that were there, kind of how the park looked and how it felt, and kind of how the staff were being as well, I'm going to give them a 4 out of 10, slightly below average for atmosphere. I don't want to give into that stereotype that Salim was making for Six Flags, but there were a ton of unruly teenagers, and not trying to be stereotypical or complaining more than normal, but there were a lot of teenagers just running amok, creating havoc, throwing jackets and throwing shoes off of ride platforms, doing totally unsafe things, not just being, annoying or unruly or whatever, but doing totally unsafe things and not being addressed at all. Line cutting was rampant. It was not great, that experience that we were there. I know there were a lot of it seemed like school field trips or summer camp kids there, but still, it's totally unacceptable for how the people were acting. And then a lot of the staff, the employees, watched stuff like this happen and just let it happen and just didn't correct anybody or didn't enforce anything at all, which is just enabling people to act like that at the parks. So the atmosphere was not great, unfortunately. And then, of course, we're going to get into the landscaping and stuff, which didn't add to the atmosphere either, but we will get there when we get there. Pricing, I think this is one of the best priced Six Flags parks for what you're getting in terms of roller coasters, so I'm going to give them an 8 out of 10 for pricing. because the price, it's about I want to say it's about $50 for a ticket, which is similar to most of the other Six Flags parks. But in this case, you're getting one of the best and deepest lineups in roller coasters in the world, like I mentioned multiple times already. So the pricing here totally makes it worth it going to this park, especially if you're a coaster enthusiast trying to get as many credits as possible. It is worth your time going to this park for the coasters alone. Nothing else has to be good at the park. The coasters are great, and that makes it worth it going to it as a coaster enthusiast. Now for staff and Park Pride, it was very average. It wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. There were some employees definitely going above and beyond of being great. And there were a decent amount of employees that didn't seem to care about their job and were just there kind of going through the motions. So it kind of evened out to about a 5 average, which is where I would put most Six Flags parks at anyways. Onto park operations. Park operations also were pretty average. Some of the rides didn't open on time. Like I said before, with the different crowds and how people were acting, including some of the staff, it wasn't super great, but it wasn't horrible. You know, I would give it an average to below average. I'm actually giving it 4.5 just because it's slightly below average of what I would expect. And I might have set slightly too high of expectations for this park. This was my first Six Flags park, and I had heard it is one of the best. And so I went in, you know, with not too high of expectations, but relatively high expectations, and I was a little bit disappointed in some of the areas regarding this park. Moving on to theming, I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't have high expectations for theming, but it did much better than I thought. Above average when it comes to theming for Six Flags Great America. And I realized that this is because this used to be a Marriott park. So they already had a lot of areas themed to certain areas in the United States. You know, they've got like the New Orleans area, and they've got the Wild West area, to name a couple. And these areas look awesome. They look really great. But the problem is, once Six Flags took over, they started slapping DC rides and a bunch of advertisements everywhere. And it really takes away from a lot of the great theming that was already there, in my opinion, which is really unfortunate. Like, for example, right in the middle of the New Orleans area, they just slap Superman. They just slap a Superman ride in there. Like, they could have themed that or named it to something really cool that would have fit in so well with that theme. But now it just doesn't make any sense. There's no theming continuity in this park. You know, they have that DC area, which looks cool. But other than that, there's no theming continuity. They'll name something generic that doesn't really fit in with it, with the area, or they'll just slap a DC ride in an area that doesn't fit, which I'm definitely not a huge fan of. So I knock them a couple points on that. They would definitely be rated higher in the theming if there was better theming continuity across the park. Now for food, we didn't eat there. Like I've said in previous reviews, I don't recommend eating at a Six Flags park in their current state just because I think it's below average. You're better off getting food outside the park or packing your own in a cooler in the car or something. But let's take a look at Six Flags Great America's food options. So we're on their website under restaurants and dining. So let's take a look at what kind of food they have to offer. They've got funnel cakes, ice cream, Coke, turkey legs, soft pretzels, deli sandwiches, wraps, salads. So that's good to see something a little bit healthier. That's a step up above Six Flags St. Louis. They got Dole soft serve ice cream, nachos, popcorn, pretzels. You're gonna see a lot of that: pretzels, nachos, churros, beef and broccoli, Chop Six, probably one of the better places to get food. Fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and gravy. That looks pretty good, actually. The Claim Jumpers. And nachos, pretzels, popcorn, cotton candy. It's all like fair food. Right as I said that, county fair. You get snacks and ice cream and stuff. Dippin' Dots. Buffalo chicken quesadilla. That sounds good. You know, if you're hungry and you don't want to leave the park, definitely get some food here or whatever. It might cost you $20 for below average to average food, which I don't think is worth it. But if you want to, go for it. Veggie burgers, okay, salads and flatbreads. They do have a fresh cafe, so it's definitely better than some Six Flags parks. Again, nachos, pretzels, popcorn, ice cream, burgers and shakes and chicken strips, tacos, rice and beans. Street tacos look good. Chili cheese dogs. Burgers, pizza and fries and salad, beer. Spaghetti and meatballs. Okay, so there is a little bit more variety here. That's what I like to see. Corn dogs, chicken strips. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's jump back over to the spreadsheet here. So they do have definitely a little bit more variety than most Six Flags parks. So I'm going to give them, we'll give them a 5. Because it is still Six Flags quality food when we're talking. So the variety probably brings it up instead of a 3 or 4 to a 5. So there are at least some options that you want to get here. It looks like they got like deli sandwiches. They do have a couple fresh options. They have salad. But keep in mind, it's going to be really expensive here, especially with it being near Chicago and it being a Six Flags park. So the food's going to be really expensive for mid-quality at best. So again, 5 out of 10, and I don't necessarily recommend you get food here, but I also didn't eat the food here, so I'm not the most qualified person to rate the food. Now on to cleanliness and landscaping, and boy do I have qualms with this park when it comes to landscaping. We arrived there, and it was relatively early in the season, early summer, still allergy season going rampant, and there were weeds everywhere. Everywhere. Like almost every single square inch of greenery in this park that should have been grass was weeds. And not just like short weeds, but tall weeds. Like you're walking along the queue lines and you're being brushed up against the side by 1 foot tall weeds sticking out through the railings. I was totally flabbergasted when I saw this and the state that the park looked in when it comes to landscaping, and even by the front gate. There's like no mulch out by the front entrance and by the sign, and just weeds everywhere. Honestly, most of the park looked like, some old abandoned house that hadn't been landscaped or touched in years. It looked horrible. Like, I was just shocked at how this park looked overall when it came to landscaping. And it seems like something so simple to do and something so simple to fix. And it seems like they just haven't done it, and they just choose not to do it. And that could have been part of the layoffs that happened in the Six Flags park chain earlier this year. I heard that, 25% of their workforce were laid off to cut costs, which is unfortunate, but, this seems like minimal stuff. If you're talking about improving the quality of your park, not have guests sneezing everywhere too, and regarding all the allergies and allergens produced by all these weeds all over the park, it just boggles my mind. The park wasn't super clean either. There was stuff on the ground. I went to the bathroom a couple times. One of the bathrooms was pretty dirty. It was just not great. And I hate doing this. I hate being so critical, but I got to give it like a 2 out of 10 when it comes to landscaping. Like, they didn't do any landscaping. Like, what am I supposed to do? What else I think I'm being pretty generous by giving them a 2. Like, the park, it was somewhat clean, but it wasn't that clean. It was probably one of the dirtier parks I've ever been to. So I got to give them a 2 out of 10, unfortunately, on cleanliness and landscaping. Again, this should be an easy fix, so hopefully they can put a little bit more effort, maybe hire some more staff, and fix this up in the future. But until then, it's not great, and one of the worst parks I've been to when it comes to the cleanliness and the landscaping. Alright, now on to my plan of attack for Six Flags Great America, for how you can try to get all of the credits as quickly as possible. I'm going to admit there's a lot of coasters here. This park gets very crowded on most days, especially on weekends, so it can be hard to get all of the credits here in one day if you don't have the Flash Pass. But we're going to try to do the best that we can. I was there during a weekday in the summer, and it wasn't too bad. I was able to get all the credits, but it took about 7 hours to get all the credits. So still took a relatively long time to get all the credits because there are a lot of them here, and this park gets very crowded. So keep that in mind when you're coming here. If you're coming on a weekend, it might be best to come, to spend a day and a half, 2 days if you're not going to get a Flash Pass. If you want to spend ample time riding everything that you want as many times as you want. So, beginning off, I recommend first off getting here as soon as possible, right as the park opens, because that is when the lines are going to be the shortest. And then also at the very end of the day, when there's going to be less people there. So if you get there early, you're going to be able to make the most out of your day. I highly recommend doing that. Getting there, half an hour before the park even opens, so you can get a good parking spot. You can be one of the first people in line on the first ride. So you're going to come up through here, through the front gate after the park opens, and then I recommend hitting one of the rides near the front of the park first. Now, some people don't necessarily like this strategy because a lot of people will do the same thing and go to whatever is the closest right when they get in. But if you're one of the first people in the park and one of the first people in through the front gate, you'll be one of the first people in line and get on and off the first ride very quickly, no matter what you go to. And I recommend going to Max Force first if it's open, because Max Force can have a lot of operational issues and has a lot of downtime due to its unreliable air launch system. It also has fairly poor capacity, as it usually runs one train So it can get quite a long line as it's near the front of the park and the newest coaster at the park, built in 2020. So I recommend going on Max Force first thing if you see it open. After Max Force, or if Max Force is closed, then I would go to the left and do Superman Ultimate Flight, because this will have the shortest line of the day during the morning and right after the park opens. And it's really probably not worth the wait if you do it later in the day, because it'll likely have an hour plus wait time, which really is not worth it for one of these B&M flyers, in my opinion. So going and doing Superman Ultimate Flight next is pretty important, even if it's got a 15, 20, 30 minute line right at the start of the day. It's good to get this one out of the way early. And then from there, it's pretty much just go and do your best, to be honest. After those first two, you have the choice of really going right or going left. I would recommend going left first, just because there's a lot more lower capacity rides off to the left. So if we look over here, after you're done with Superman Ultimate Flight, we have the Dark Knight Coaster, which is an indoor wild mouse. Well, that can get very long lines because it has low capacity, and it's popular with younger guests as well. So I would do Dark Knight Coaster next, and then just make our way around. You can skip the Larson Loop because it's not a roller coaster, even if the park markets it as a roller coaster. That is a flat ride. It is not a coaster. So then after the Dark Knight Coaster, you can come over here and ride Joker. Joker can get long lines as well. It's very gimmicky. The GP like it. It has fairly low capacity just because there's not many people that can ride on each train. Get a ride on Joker. Get a ride on Vertical Velocity. Again, it has low capacity, but when I was there, this one had almost no line at all. So I don't know if people don't generally like it or what. But do Vertical Velocity, and then you also have Batman over here. This is a B&M, so it's got great capacity. It shouldn't have too long of a line no matter when you do it, but a lot of people love this ride because it's smooth. It still runs well. So I think it was the original Batman model, which is pretty awesome that it's running so well and still so popular today. So after we're done with Batman, we're just going to make our way back towards the park. We've got a kiddie coaster that I can't really remember what it is. Is that Sprocket Rockets or something like that? I can't remember, but I didn't ride this one. You can do that one if you want. And then we're going to go back to do Goliath. Goliath is definitely one of the best two roller coasters at the park. It's one of the fastest wooden roller coasters in the world, if not the fastest and the tallest currently in operation. So obviously like Son of Beast and stuff was taller and faster, but it's defunct now, so Goliath holds the record since Lightning Rod at Dollywood no longer is a wooden roller coaster, is now a hybrid. So Goliath could have a long wait by the time you get back here, but it's the best roller coaster in the park. It's a short ride, but it's worth the wait to get another RMC credit, as always. So after you're done with Goliath, we're going to make our way back around here and go over to X-Flight. And X-Flight was only running one train when I was there, which was really unfortunate because we waited an hour for it because of that. So hopefully they're running two trains when you're there. I'm going to switch colors here. So after X-Flight, we're just going to make our way back towards the front now, to the right side. And here we have Demon. Now Demon was, in my opinion, the worst ride here. It's an old Arrow. It's pretty janky. There's a couple transitions, especially coming out of the Demon head and going into the corkscrews. There's a very big jolt that can definitely cause some headbanging, so be aware of that on Demon. But Demon won't have much of a line just because not a lot of people like the rough ride that it is today anymore. So after Demon, there's a cool dark ride over here, Battle for Metropolis 4D. A lot of these newer Six Flags parks have these shooting dark rides, so that was pretty fun. We did spend time to do that. And then what I would do is come back around here and get a ride on Raging Bull. And Raging Bull, in my opinion, was the best roller coaster at this park. It is definitely a very unique B&M. It's one of the best B&M hypers depending on where you sit. So highly recommend you have to sit in the back a couple of rows. Where you sit on this ride makes or breaks the ride experience. If you sit in the front, it's relatively tame, somewhat boring. People say it's one of the worst B&M hypers because of that. And I totally get where they're coming from. But in the back, it's totally a riot. It's so fun. The airtime is so strong off the first drop. You get ejector airtime right over that first drop and on a lot of the airtime hills. Totally worth waiting for the back row on Raging Bull. Definitely a great B&M hyper and my favorite ride at the park because it's really the only one that has a long ride time. Every other coaster here is really short, it seems like. After Raging Bull, we're going to go over to Viper, and the entrance for Viper is right next to it. Viper is a really unique wooden roller coaster that they built in-house. It has a lot of strong laterals, a lot of decent airtime, very underrated wooden roller coaster. Definitely recommend you get a ride on this. And then the classic Whizzer, of course, a Schwarzkopf model, as you hit on your way out. And by then, you have achieved all of the credits here at Six Flags Great America. And there are so many coasters here, I might have honestly missed one or two. Like, I don't even know what number 1 is. It looks like a kiddie coaster. But that is how you do Six Flags Great America in the most efficient way possible, in my opinion. Just to summarize, you start off by doing something close to the park, close to the front entrance if you are one of the first people in through the front gate. Do Max Force early, as it can go down. You want to make sure you get that credit. It's one of the better rides at the park. Superman Ultimate Flight gets extremely long wait times and has slow dispatches, so get that in early as well. And then you kind of just make your way around. And I usually like to go left to right, just because there are lower capacity rides and more rides off to the left than there are on the right. And that's how I would tackle Six Flags Great America in one day. So to summarize my ranking for Six Flags Great America, the overall experience that we had, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 just because I prioritized so much of my experience on the roller coasters that are at a park. It's unfortunate that so many other areas in the park kind of fell flat, but this park definitely excels at their coaster lineup. They have such a deep lineup. It's one of the best out there. It's 9.5 out of 10. Definitely worth coming here just for the coasters alone. It'll make your experience a pretty good one, being able to ride so many different kinds of roller coasters. And it's definitely worth the pricing too. So pricing and the coasters are definitely the bright spots of this park. Theming too. It's definitely better than most Six Flags parks comparatively. Now, where this park really needs some help is obviously cleaning and landscaping. It's some of the worst I've ever seen, being brutally honest. It's a disaster. Their food, as most Six Flags parks, can improve on options, the quality, especially compared to the price. It's absolutely absurd how much they charge for food. It's like $12 or $14 for a soft pretzel that's been, sitting in the rotisserie machine, not even really fresh, which is totally absurd. Again, staff and park pride need some work, ride operations, atmosphere. All of them just need a lot of work. And I totally understand that this park, has seen better days. I think I went during a down year for sure. For Six Flags as a chain overall, and for this park, from what I've heard from locals who come here all the time, they say that the park's kind of been going downhill, and this year it hasn't been operating too well, unfortunately. So hopefully they can turn that around in the next few years. It's a solid park overall. I would say the overall verdict is it's all right. It's one of the best parks in the United States in terms of roller coasters. But other than that, you're not really getting a whole lot. You're not getting much for food or ride ops or anything else. Just come into this park knowing you're going to ride a lot of great roller coasters and don't have many other expectations, being honest. Now, I came into this park thinking it was going to be one of the best Six Flags parks, and I came out of it thinking, it's not that great in terms of the entire experience, the entire package as a park. But in terms of roller coasters, definitely one of the best Six Flags parks. Only second to probably Six Flags Magic Mountain. Other than that, in terms of operations, operationally, it's not one of the better Six Flags parks, I think. That probably would go to Six Flags Fiesta Texas. But definitely top tier Six Flags park and top tier park in the country in terms of roller coasters. So it is definitely worth your time coming out here if you're looking at coasters. If your priority is anything else other than roller coasters, it's probably not worth your time coming here. That's just the way it is. So I hope this review is helpful. I hope I wasn't being too critical. I'm trying to be as honest as I can. As always, it was only one day and one single experience that I had at this park. So this could be vastly different from a time that you go or from a time that you've been at the park. So you can take it with a grain of salt. It is just my opinion after all, and you're free to have your own opinion as well. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please stay tuned for more coaster content coming soon. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I hope every single one of you have a wonderful day. I will see you next time.